And some researcher has been going back through the storeroom and has stumbled across it. It's like a cigar box shaped thing with the Egyptian flag on it. And on opening it, what was found inside was a piece of cedar wood, which has been radiocarbon dated to about 5,000 years ago. And it was found inside the Great Pyramid. And it's believed to be a ruler, a bit of kit for measuring, used by ancient Egyptians, possibly, in the building of the Great Pyramid itself.
Wow.
And so this thing has been lying out of sight and out of mind, in a storeroom for all of that time, and now it's been brought back into the light. And it's almost poetic, I would say, that of all things, it's a ruler, because from ancient times, our species has desired to apply order and measure to the chaos of the reality around us. It's no coincidence that ruler means simultaneously something with which you can measure, and it also means somebody above us, like a king or God, who lays down the law and makes the rules. Even better, it's made of cedar wood, and people possibly associate cedar with Lebanon. That lovely song by Paul Brady, The Island. The skies of Lebanon are burning, those mighty cedars bleeding in the heat. And Lebanon was founded by the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians were the great builders of the ancient world. Their capital was Byblos, from which we get the word Bible and bibliography and book. And it was their alphabet that gave us the written alphabet that we use today. But they were great builders. And King Solomon, the biblical King Solomon, brought the Phoenicians to Jerusalem 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, 800 years before the birth of Christ, and had them build his first temple. The temple in Jerusalem was built by the Phoenicians. And no doubt they had rulers made of cedar wood. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Phoenicians had anything to do with the Great Pyramid. It was built by the ancient Egyptians. But the fact that almost nothing was found in the modern era in the Great Pyramid, it was looted in antiquity. And so it was only fragments left behind. But how perfect and how meaningful that something that may have been used in the building of the structure itself has been found. We've just been talking about things close to home being overlooked, being precious things among us that attention was not being paid to. And here we find, by chance, in a storeroom, something so valuable that tells us something about what it is in our species that we have always needed to be able to lay order in order to make sense of the world around us.
See, this is why I wanted you to talk about this, because all I could think about when I saw the story this morning was that the ancient Egyptians sort of managed to become extinct, despite the fact that they were some of the most clever and ingenious people ever to have lived on the earth. And it made me think of where we're ending up.
It's very interesting that when you say that, there's an existential crisis around the ancient Egyptians. Their civilization lasted for 3,000 years. By the time Cleopatra was walking about in the temple of Karnak, now Cleopatra is closer to our time than she was to the people who built the pyramids. That's the span of time that the Egyptian civilization goes across. But they became preoccupied with death. It became a society that was preoccupied not with what was happening to the living in the living world, but was making all of its preparations, especially for the elite, for what was going to happen in the next life. And they took their eye off of the living world. And in a very profound and meaningful way, it became a kind of a moribund, morbid society. And eventually, the rest of the world that had life and a preoccupation with the living flowing through it like fresh water, Egypt was left behind like a kind of lagoon, a kind of a backwater, and it fell away from everybody's consciousness. And so even though it had lasted for all of that time, and it had managed to sustain itself and to maintain an idea across not just centuries but millennia, because it stopped paying attention to the living and became overly fascinated by death and the dead, in time it became nothing more than the Great Pyramid is essentially the biggest gravestone on the planet.
Well, isn't